I always tell people a lot of times, why does second and third generation businesses fail? Whether that's agriculture, whether that's my type of business, whatever. It's because you get a disconnect from what I call buying the gravel. You go by any of my locations, there's a bunch of gravel out there. When you pull up in the parking lot, you don't think about walking on it. You don't think about what it costs. You don't think about anything. You think about, I'm going to get in the building and get what I need. The problem with gravel, it takes a long time to pay for. It has instant salvage value, and it doesn't go very far.
Hey, welcome to another episode of the Culture-neer podcast. I'm your host, Terry Gwaltney, and our guest today is Justin Ferrell, husband, father, business owner, serial entrepreneur. Justin, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you.
All right. Well, I'm excited about this. I know you a little bit on a personal level. I follow kind of your business pursuits, acquisitions, and everything in between. I think our audience is going to get a lot out of our conversation today. But why don't we start a little bit about your journey and kind of how you got started in your field?
Sure. So my father was a coal miner that was half unemployed in the 80s. And I figured out really quick, went to Murray State, got my bachelor's degree in ag business, and had to figure out a way to pay for school. And I had to come up with a business name at the same time. So my first business was LMB, which was affectionately called Lawnmower Boy. And so I had about $10,000 to my name, thought I'd never need any more money, and I would buy and sell and flip lawnmowers out of basically my rented house front yard to pay for school. And it was always pressured when tuition was due or books were time to pay for. I had to increase sales in a hurry. Came back home, fought the battles of trying to get financing for inventory, and heard the words SBA and heard the words we don't floor plan from banks, and you want to do what? Started in my backyard at the farm, had a gravel dock that we had made, and started buying and selling equipment from dealers. Heard many times I was going to fail. Did not had a flip phone, no internet connection, and in Glacier, Illinois. So literally humble beginnings. Literally have slept in my truck because I couldn't afford the hotel room to do this. So very humble beginnings.
So true entrepreneur story.
Yes.
That's awesome. If you look back, was there a childhood memory that kind of gave you maybe a sneak peek into what you're doing today?
Sure. My dad always traded in equipment some. I get asked all the time if I have a rich uncle or a rich grandfather or received a large inheritance. None of that has ever happened, although I'm looking for somebody to adopt me. But he was a little bit of entrepreneurial. He had to be due to the coal mines in and out of employment all the time, not by his choice, but by the coal market. So he had very much had a survival mentality that has passed on to me for sure. And growing up in Southern Illinois, like we all live, that almost forces you to be that way if you're in business at all.
Yeah. So family-wise, how did you meet your significant other?
Family-wise, when I was 20 years old, I started youth pastoring, and I went to an Acquire the Fire conference.
Oh, yeah.
And the guy gave a challenge to be single for a year, and I wanted to make that challenge true to help support my youth that I had at the time, and that challenge turned into about 13 years of singleness. Met my wife and stepdaughter, and got married when I was 34 years old. And so that really changed my life, really brought balance to my life because I was working all the time, 12-hour days, and always afraid that I would not make the next sale or make the next deal. So that's really, really changed, brought a lot of balance and a lot of different focus in my life. My wife is incredibly supportive of what we do, and incredibly has a ton of confidence. My wife and I definitely have a relationship where she asks me, did you do that? I heard you did. Not us having a long-winded discussion, can you do that? And so nothing against either side of that. But in my world, I have to make very quick decisions all the time. So a lot of times it doesn't give opportunity to have those conversations. But she's incredibly supportive. Have a nearly 15-year-old stepdaughter who thinks she can do anything, but still thinks she knows. She still thinks that I know something. So that's good too.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, I think isn't that probably every hard-charging entrepreneur's story is if you're not careful, it's our greatest weakness, our greatest strength to become our greatest weakness, our ability to work hard, be driven, press through. If we're not careful, we end up in the workaholic ditch.
Yep.
So it sounds like the family kind of helped bring the balance aspect of that. So talk to your audience a little bit about that, because we know to be successful in a bank account and not to be successful in life, it's not worth anything.
No. First of all, Jesus is everything to me. And I'm not saying that to you to be social. I realize that 100 years from now, very few people is going to know who my name is. So I've always tried not to make this my kingdom. And I've always tried to, a lot of entrepreneurial people, because they get told constantly they're not going to make it or it's going to fall apart, they live a life of trying to prove something to someone. It's definitely not in my mentality at all. I constantly tell my people and myself daily, I'm in a race with myself to make myself better. I'm trying to compete with yesterday's Justin on processes, procedures, how I approach life to be better than I was yesterday, not better than someone else. Not whether that's through sales volume, whether that's through anything that bank account or anything else. I want to be a better me, because that's the true residual effect of my life, for sure, in my opinion.
Yeah. What's the favorite part of Justin's morning routine?
Justin gets up about 4:30, 5 o'clock. And Justin gets to work about an hour and a half before anybody else. Because Justin, speaking of Justin in the third person, Justin talks to himself a lot then. But I can get more done an hour and a half of that morning, especially after spending time with God. But I can get more done in that hour and a half than I seems like I can get done the rest of the day. I really have a personal belief about work, or especially when you're having employees, the first 2.5, 3 hours are the most crucial. The day is gone if it's not planned. And so planning the night before is one thing. Reassuring those plans that morning is huge. So.
Yeah. My oldest son runs a lot of the majority of the production in our company, and it's the same thing. He'll be at the office an hour and a half at least before anybody, 2 hours before others. But the same thing, it's in that kind of solitude that you can get so much done. And allow you to lead your people more effectively. What's your favorite all-time book that stands out you read outside of the Bible?
Favorite all-time book? I really, this is kind of a cheesy example, but I like the book on the Southwest Airplanes founder called Nuts. It's 20 years old. The second half of the book is pretty redundant.
Is that Herb Keller?
Yep, Herb Keller. Yeah. But the first half of the book is really, really good when you think about somebody in his shoes, not only with his money, but with the pressure that he had developing the airlines, thinking of handing out peanuts on an airplane, or thinking of when he was interviewing pilots that he would offer them Bermuda shorts and a Bermuda shirt, or they could wear their suit and tie. And that told him how that those people were going to fit in his culture. I try to do a lot of those things too. Most definitely I'm always after a skill set. I'm always after a mindset more than I am a skill set. When I'm hiring, when I'm trying to bring people in an organization.
You train skill set.
Yes, sir. That's right.
You've got to hire for mindset.
And a lot of times, if I'm hiring a skill set out of a like-minded business, I'm having to help them unlearn a lot of things. And I don't mean that condescending to where they come from. We just view things sometimes differently. So it's easier to have a teachable mindset and learn the skill set than it is to unmind or remove a skill set that's entrenched.
Yeah, totally agree. It's easier to give birth than it is to raise the dead too sometimes. Yes. Magical moment you'll never forget? What comes to mind?
Magical moment I'll never forget in business or life or
just in general.
Personal life, definitely my wife. Magical moment in business. was finally getting off SBA loans back in the day. And magical moment in business was probably buying our first location in Metropolis, which was huge for us because it was something we never thought of. And it really, really trained me to how to look at any other acquisition now because of things that we'd uncovered when we started that process. So,
who would you say was probably the biggest influencer on you as you're growing up?
Influencer on me was my grandfather. My dad worked all the time to no fault of his own. I was just telling somebody this here the other day. I remember my grandfather was a pastor and taught me how to be professional. And so this may sound a little bit dry, but I went to a lot of funerals with my grandpa. My grandpa was very, very OCD. He was the type of person that would make an appointment for his haircut a month ahead of time, come home and write the check out, put the check and the appointment card together 30 days out. I find my life, I struggle to be that. That's my mindset. I remember one key memory of my grandfather. I was like 5 years old, and it was a big deal to go get Grandpa's mail at the Galatia post office. I go into the Galatia post office. There's a lady coming into. I go in front of the lady in the door, bring back Grandpa's mail, run back to the truck. I said, I got the mail, Grandpa. He said, what'd you just do? And I said, well, I just got the mail. He said, you just walked right in front of that lady. And it's a weird memory for me to tear up, but that's such an entrenchment of respect. He said, you didn't get the door for that lady. And every time I pass the post office, I think about those things that I want to live an atmosphere that is not live a life that's not me, but it's others, and want so much to live a life of not he was really successful, or he was, look at the tractors, look at this, look at that. Man, he loved people. And that's a really defining moment in my life. My grandfather was very, very professional. Back to the funeral thing, I'd go help him do funerals and stuff, and he would notice things that nobody else would notice and say things that no one else would say. I find myself, because of that upbringing, being very analytical of any situation that I'm in. And sometimes my mind works 12 months from now, not today, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, totally. Kind of like God. We think situationally, he thinks generationally.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we're playing chess where others are playing checkers. Interesting that would be the thought that would come out. But I think for us in business, that's so telling, because I think it's so easy to get caught up and be task driven that you forget why you're doing what you're doing, which is obviously what he was driving home.
Sure.
It's about serving the people. It really wasn't just about the task of going and getting the mail. And I think we grow up and we celebrate the task if we're not careful.
Yeah, and especially in a sales-driven mindset, yesterday doesn't matter. It's what have you done today? And so the only residual effect of any business, in my opinion, is what are you doing for other people? How are you loving other people? How are you serving other people? The money goes away very quickly, and the stress can consume you, and the results-driven can consume you. But how am I taking time and stopping? We live in a society that has more technology than it's ever had to save time, but we have less time than we've ever had.
Yeah.
And so I really am very conscious of that.
So good. If you get personal just for a minute, is there a significant failure that you've experienced, and maybe the most important lesson you learned from it?
Sure. God has definitely blessed me with, I've always valued being teachable. And God has definitely blessed me. I've always, the Bible says there's wisdom in many counselors. It doesn't say there's wisdom in many opinions. And so I'm always after somebody that has fruit, that has done it, and has an opinion. And I've always, even at age 20, always wanted to connect with people at that time, 50, 60-year-old people that were doing something that I could learn. Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Why are you marketing this way? Why are you doing this? I can point to times in my life where I did not take advice, either from God or from people with fruit. in a world where people want to take ownership for everything that they do, I always say that wisdom is a gift without the pain. If somebody has wisdom, they have been hit in the face to get it, typically. And if I can get that, the children of Israel could have went across the desert in 2 weeks, and it took 40 whatever. My most gift that somebody can give me is something that will save me time or bring insight. And I can point to times in my life, whether that would be a banker, whether that would be a mentor of some sort, whether that would be a pastor, where I just blew off what they said. And it's like, man, what was I thinking? And you have to glean everybody's perspective through your situation too. But I can point time and time again where I have been unteachable in the moment, and it cost me time.
We talk a lot on here about, experience is what we gain learning from our own mistakes, but wisdom is learning from the mistakes of others.
Sure.
That's why I think we encourage people to read all the time. I really think lifetime learners are readers. Now you can listen to it. You don't physically have to read it, obviously, but man, if I can go spend $30 and buy a book that there's 25 years of hard knocks and their wisdom, and I can consume that in 2 hours, I'm a fool not to do it.
Absolutely.
And I think that's exactly what you're talking about. So tell the audience in your words, what's your definition of culture?
My definition of culture goes back to what I was saying earlier, is the residual effect of my vision. I say this to my people constantly. My people are the most important thing, and every employer says that in situations like this. My people are number one, but I mean, my people in a close-knit circle, when I'm at a location, they're going to follow what I'm saying. But I'm more worried about the people that are at another location furthest away from me. How far are they away from the checkbook, per se? How far are they away from their paycheck? And what culture do they emphasize? What's crazy is you can buy a building with no problem. You can buy inventory with no problem. But culture is something that you create. And residual culture is something that is carried on when you're not right there watching. I very much have a culture where I try to empower people as much as possible. I tell my people all the time, I want you to get to a place where you tell me what you've done, not ask me if you can do it. And there's a big difference in between the two. Tell me what you've done is an implementation of culture. Ask me if you can do it is meaning that me as a leader have either not implemented what I'm wanting to happen, or the vision I have, or I'm not hired the right people with the competence or the foresight or the aggressiveness to do it. It's huge. It's everything. All this other stuff can be bought. Implementing that culture, especially when you're not right there on site, is difficult. Can I control what every employee does or how they react every day? No, I can't. But a lot of that is found in being equally yoked. The Bible talks about not being unequally yoked. We always think about in marriage not to be unequally yoked, but definitely my core leaders, we have to be equally yoked. We have to be even my person that sweeps the floor, which are important to me, they have to know that, hey, Justin wouldn't do this or Justin wouldn't do that, and this is why. And it's everything, and it's a limiting thing to growth. Once again, you and I could buy locations for Integrity Roofing. We can buy locations for Little Tractor in Idaho. But if it doesn't have the culture, it's everything.
It's one of the things that we said early on. We had a guy speak at a year-end celebration one time, and he was the former president of Kentucky Fried Chicken. And we were having lunch after the fact, and he was asking me about, what do you see in the future, da-da-da-da. And I said, well, one of the things that we see in the industry that we're in is that I believe that we could take the level of service and the product and the people, and the latter, the people and the service being the most important. And I think we can go anywhere and we can be successful. But I said we made a decision early on that we wouldn't take advantage of an opportunity for growth at the expense of our culture.
Absolutely.
Because the culture is the secret sauce that makes all of that work.
Absolutely.
It was interesting because last week we had on the show a former VP of Chick-fil-A. Mm-hmm. The conversation I was just having was with former president of Kentucky Fried Chicken, just ironically. he was telling me from his perspective, admiring Chick-fil-A at a distance. He said anytime they would come into town, we would rush into markets to take footprints, and they would show up late to the game.
Absolutely.
But yet they would outproduce them every time in 6 days versus 6. And what both of those guys told me is that they had learned how to scale culture.
Absolutely.
And that is the most difficult thing. Having culture in your own office, whether it's 10 people or 50 people, is one thing. Having them in a different state, having them across multiple states. I think that's the importance of you were saying it a while ago, you want your team, your employees to come to a point where they can make a decision and tell you about it. And you were talking about the importance of the leader, getting them in a place to where they're empowered to be able to do that. But I think if you talk in corporate speak, I mean, that's really what the purpose of a core value is.
Absolutely.
It's not to hang on a wall. It's like when they're in that moment of a decision making, those core values are Justin's values. Mm-hmm. And so this is how we should treat a customer. This is how we should take the high road. This is how we should do business. And I think that's the importance of the folks that are listening today is like, don't have a mission statement, a vision statement, core values because it's the end thing to do. If we go to your company and and we get past your top 3 leaders and nobody can tell us what they are, they're just artwork.
Yeah. And I would add to that, I would say ego is always exchanged for reality. So I'm never asking an employee to do something that I'm not willing to do currently. If it's necessary, it's not best use of my time. I'm not asking them to do something I wouldn't do or have done. And so and everything I do communicates something. I think that's so crucial with an owner of any kind. I drove a 25-year-old truck here. Can I afford something more? Yes. But I don't want to own anything that I'm driving daily that costs more than my lowest paid employee in the driveway. I'm wearing a Carhartt shirt and blue jeans. Now, that's not for everybody. Some people would say that's unprofessional, but I'm able to connect with any customer that comes to the door, and I'm able to connect with any employee that's out there working. And I think a lot of nonverbals with the customer and the employee are huge. If the employee has a problem, I have a problem. If the employee has a death in the family, we have a death in the family. If the customer is out there throwing a strap on their tractor, it annoys me terribly when I pull up at a location and somebody's not out there helping them. Now, do they need help? Do they want help? I don't know that until I address that. But in a world of corporate box store mentality where you're just a number, I want our customers and our people treated differently than the employee's not a slave to me and the customer's not a dollar amount to me.
It's huge. Good. It's kind of a great segue to the next question because I was talking to a marketing company before we came in here, and I think the battleground for businesses now is not so much, advertising used to be what mediums can we use to get in front of the most eyeballs in order to be able to convert them into a funnel where they become a customer, give us an opportunity to convert them to a customer. To me, especially if you've been in business for a while, I think if you're doing it the right way, your reputation becomes an extension, obviously, of your brand. And so it's automatically going to draw additional customers. And that's why you should, I think, view your business as a customer for life.
Sure. When
you're having those interactions. To me, the next big battleground is not for the customers, it's for the employees. Mm-hmm. And so I think we have just a big issue with retention as we do recruitment. And we've definitely seen that as people went through COVID. What cultural elements you think ensure that we have great retention rates? Because we know it takes so much time to find the right person. And
sure.
You pour so much into them, you don't want to lose them.
Yeah, a lot of times when we have very low turnover, but I find that the people I've tried to help the most are the people that oftentimes are as disconnected from me in the future. People that have personal life issues, people that have personal drama going on, personal things going on. I've often found, much like a pastor sometimes, that people that you pour the most into sometimes reject the most. And I think that in hiring, I want people to know get-go that my faith is everything. And whether they're a Christian or not, I'm not going to compromise Jesus knowingly. And I'm saying this for two segments. One, when you see Judas betray Jesus for 30 pieces of silver, he put a price on his integrity then. The other thing that you see about that is when Judas left, Jesus did not chase him, offering him a to-go box of the Last Supper. A lot of times as an employer, I have spent a lot of time trying to chase people, offering them more of me, that they did not get what I was trying to do to begin with. Now, one, that could have been my communication of the vision of the culture. Two, it could be their total rejection of the vision and the culture. And me chasing them a lot of times to get them to see that, a lot of times is offering more of me that they didn't want to begin with. Is that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
And so
a lot of discernment.
and so I desperately try to implement basic standards and desperately try to empower people. I have found that to be the best way. How can I take my micromanaging off of you? Now, that comes with in-depth training. That comes with, obviously, a lot of times not watching a PowerPoint presentation, but some one-on-one with somebody that's doing it right. But then that ultimately comes from me empowering them to do it right, and then rechecking, hey, this is, in a nice way, this is not the direction I want to go. If this is the direction you want to go, then we're going different directions, basically, instead of begging them to see it.
How do you think companies can use their culture as a competitive advantage?
I think it's very difficult in a local area. A person in our county, in our area, can't go to the bathroom without somebody else knowing it. In our area, it is a good thing and a bad thing. If you're doing good things and people like you, they're going to say, hey, did you hear what so-and-so did? If they want to make up or think you're doing bad things, they can spread that very quickly too. I always have in my environment, I always ask, well, what's the Justin Ferrell rumor you've heard of the week? And so I've heard 4 different preposterous things in the last month, not because I think I'm a star or center of attention. It just always baffles me how culture that I'm trying to present, character that I feel that I have, is totally misconstrued. Now, whether it's misconstrued because it's competition, because it's jealousy, because it's this, because it's that, I can't control that. But it's very difficult because in our environment, everybody's trying to present they're an ethical company.
Oh, yeah.
In our environment, everybody's trying to present that they are going to do the right thing. In our environment, everyone's trying to present that. And you can do that with a 5-second commercial, a 20-second Facebook video. You can do that with all sorts of medium, but backing up what you say is a total other thing. A lot of times, I think doing in your business or my business, I'm having to overcome an experience someone had before.
Yeah, you're prejudged.
You're prejudged already. Yeah. So we try to control that culture a lot with placement of offices, being sure people are greeted, lots of nonverbals, clean buildings, lots of things. But ultimately, if that person had a bad experience where they went to before, you have to overcome that. And in some cases, you won't. Yeah. And that's where I was saying earlier about chasing people that trying to give them more of you that they didn't value it to begin with for whatever reason.
Yeah. It's interesting. Most businesses, like if you look at a parallel business to your own, 80% of probably what your competitors are doing are the exact same things that you have to do. And they have to buy a building, they have to buy lots, they have to have offices, they have to have staff, they have to have bathrooms, they probably need to be clean.
Sure.
Da.
It's a cookie cutter thing.
Yes. But the 20% that makes all of this different is really what can make 100% of the difference.
Absolutely.
And that's where I think it kind of comes down to culture and some of those little things you're talking about, how you serve people, your perspective, because how we view things is how we do things. And so I think that's why the perspective is so important. Talk to us a little bit about the relationship between company culture and customer satisfaction.
Yeah. Company culture and customer satisfaction. Company culture, giving that salesman, giving that parts person freedom without having to ask. You've sat at a car lot before, you and your family, and you went in there and you said, I want to trade for this car. The person gets up and he says, well, let me go ask my boss. And you're sitting there thinking the whole time, do I need to be talking to his boss? Is he really talking to his boss? Do I need to go someplace else? Do I need to do this? Do I need to do that? There's a moment in that communication that's broken. In our situation, I am very back to empowering salesmen or empowering parts people or empowering service people. Why didn't you fix the problem? Why are you telling me about the problem? Not that I'm not afraid to hear about the problem, but if you're telling me about the problem, we've already missed the moment of fixing the problem. Mm-hmm. So our salesmen, for instance, don't get up and ask, can I do this? Can I do that? They have parameters that they can do, and they do it. And so because any other place, you can be treated like a number. And to your point, everybody else has a roof. Everybody else has a bathroom. Everybody else has this and has that. Every customer comes to the door, whether they want a $2 part or a $100,000 tractor, they're a gift. And they're a gift either from my reputation, from the business reputation, from advertising, from primary word of mouth, whatever. We better do something with that gift and better not push the clutch in per se and hem haw around and let me go talk to the boss, because those are not conversations I want to have.
Yeah, that's good.
And to your point, if people come from a corporate culture where they've had to ask, hey, every time, can I go to the bathroom now? Or can I do this? Can I do that? A lot of times I never can get that out of them. So that's why I'm constantly, to the earlier conversation, trying to hire a mindset and teach the skill set. If I hire somebody to work for me from a very corporate atmosphere, it may take them a year to, lack of better terms, to detox. They may have to go and, is it okay if I do this? Is it okay if I do this? Well, that customer's already left. You should have already done it.
Yeah, it's an expensive learning curve.
Yes, sir.
What advice do you have for the next generation of leaders on building a business and nurturing their culture?
Find a mentor. Find somebody that has fruit. You will find tons of opinions, but find somebody who has fruit. From a banking aspect, find a banker that's actually has some entrepreneurial mindset. From a business aspect, if you're doing a brick and mortar, as you know, there's a grand difference between doing a service business and a brick and mortar business. I always tell people a lot of times, why does second and third generation businesses fail? Whether that's agriculture, whether that's my type of business, whatever. It's because you get a disconnect from what I call buying the gravel. Mm-hmm. You go by any of my locations, there's a bunch of gravel out there. When you pull up in the parking lot, you don't think about walking on it. You don't think about what it costs. You don't think about anything. You think about, I'm going to get in the building and get what I need. The problem with gravel, it takes a long time to pay for. It has instant salvage value, and it doesn't go very far. And when I say gravel, when foundational elements, if you're building a brick and mortar business, it takes a long time to buy things that have no residual value. No residual value. Specialty tools, company trucks, parking lots, buildings, they can't take one of my buildings and turn it into a McDonald's. So there's a specialized asset there that has a high cost and an instant salvage value. And for an entrepreneur starting out, that can be incredibly discouraging. If you're doing a service business, you still have specialty tools. You still have a name to prop up. You still have to, in service world, you're still having to overcome, as we said earlier, all the people that showed up, got the deposit, never came back, or didn't show up when they said they were going to, or didn't show up when they said they were going to for a consultation. You still have lots and lots and lots and lots of things to overcome. But it has taken a long time to buy the gravel.
Well, what's the one thing in your business journey to success that you didn't expect?
The amount of hours that I still put in. And it's probably because I want my yeses to be yeses. The amount of hours that I still put in, trying to get that culture that you're talking about at the farthest outreaches of me. The amount of time that I still put in to try to scale what I want. Part of that is me probably not letting go and wanting perfection. Part of that could be my leadership style lacking. But it is the hours that I still put in. And I think that person has to realize what's problems for employees may not be a problem for you, but they need to be treated like problems. If somebody calls and wants to know what kind of ink pens to buy, I say just buy them. Let's just get blue ones. But that legitimately could be a legitimate problem to them because of past culture, because of corporate culture, because of some boss in the past saying, why didn't you buy the black ones? I think for me is bridging those people to empower them. Pick out the ink pens on your own next time. I trust you. I think what limits entrepreneurs from growing is the ones that still have to be in control and say, this is the ink pens, let's have a meeting about it. And a lot of these things we take up time on are irrelevant.
Yeah. Yeah. Learning delegation, which I think you have to back that all the way up. You have to hire a ride. If you hire a ride, it makes the delegation so much easier.
One thing I would say about people that are trying to develop any sort of business is understanding your payer mix before you build the building. There's not a Rolls-Royce dealership in Saline County. Why is that? Because it would go over like a lead balloon. And you see many people trying to put in businesses without doing research of who do I have to sell to? What is the demographic of that? What does that look like? How can I scale this? Who's going to copy me? Who's going to try to take over my market share? Who has more money than I have to fight it? Who can last longer? Who am I competing with? And like I said, who is there to sell to? A Rolls-Royce business wouldn't make it. A lawnmower business, a tractor business, only still yet has limited amount of people to sell to. And so understanding that demographic is huge because I think there's a misconception with most people that we have an unlimited amount of customers. And in a low population area like ours, that's not the case. In a high population area, that's not the case because typically there's more choices of what we're doing. We may be the only show in town, but there may not be many people watching that show.
Yeah, that's really good. If you look back, what would you say is the most important lessons you probably learned throughout your career?
It's a cheesy statement that I use often. You never know somebody till you hire them, fire them, marry them, or tell them no. It's one of my favorite statements.
That's true.
And behavior in an interview is different than behavior when it has to be applied.
Isn't it though?
And I always tell in premarital counseling and people that are dating, I always try to tell them, what little I do, you don't have to take somebody on a date to know what they're like. And when it comes to employees, boy, you can learn a lot by behavior before you hire them to know what they're like.
Yeah.
And so I would say this too. One of the best office people I have in my office that runs my office is a former Kentucky Fried Chicken manager. And she was in the 0.1 percentile, and she'd be embarrassed if I said that. She was in the 0.1 percentile of Kentucky Fried Chicken managers nationwide for training, for management, for numbers, for whatever. She's an amazing office person. In terms of making things go, you can give her a stack and she sorts through it. Well, why is it that way? It's that way because she had to make a bunch of teenagers make a chicken sandwich correctly. And if not, it was coming back through the drive-thru and she was getting cussed at. I just think that a lot of times as an employer, you're out looking for somebody that fits the slot, and you've got to, once again, look for somebody that has the mindset. The mindset always dominates the skill set.
Yeah.
Always.
Absolutely. One lesson you've learned through your work experience that you believe everyone should discover at some point in their life?
Lessons?
Yeah, if you just had one.
Integrity is everything. Integrity is everything. And in my situation and your situation, a lot of times that integrity depends upon the quality of the product you're selling, depends upon the people that deliver it, depends upon so many things. But in the realms that I can control, once again, I want my yeses to be yeses. Totally.
That's good. Any advice you'd give our listeners today on improving their culture?
Self-development, as you mentioned, is the most important thing. I say constantly in terms of culture, people will support that which they help create. I don't mean that as a cheesy bumper sticker, but as much as I can involve people and help creating what we're trying to do and get them jump on board, 2 years later, 3 years later, 5 years later, the residual effect of it is I work for them and this is our culture.
Yeah.
This is And that's a far cry from I work for him and that is his culture.
Yeah.
And so getting people to buy in, getting people to see it is huge. It's more important than the brick and mortar. It's more important than the inventory. It's more important than whatever widget you're selling. It's huge.
Yeah, and I think for leaders, you're hitting on a great point. If you'll listen to the language, you'll be able to gauge the depth of buy-in and how engaged your employees are by simply listening. You know, is it our, is it my, is it them, is it us? Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a subtle internal change, you know, when your team is bought in, and I think that's why culture is so important. And I think this is why, to me, it's so frustrating, because I talk to so many people and the attitude is almost like, I know the culture thing is important, but right now I'm just trying to get everybody paid. I got to get the IRS off my back. I got another insurance audit I got to go through, you know, and I've got 3 HR issues that I need to deal with. And so when I get to that plateau of success, then I'm going to start working on this.
Yep.
The reality is they probably wouldn't have as many challenges if they treated the importance of culture as foundational, which is what it really is.
Absolutely.
Because it goes back to, you know, I don't want to just hire off of skill set. I need to hire off mindset. I mean, I'm not going to teach somebody how to have integrity. I'm not going to teach somebody how to be honest. I'm not going to teach somebody how to care for people. I can teach them a skill set, but if they don't have those basic things and they haven't got those in the first 35 years of their life, I need to hire for that. I need to train for the skill set that they need.
Yeah, and I think that I always say this in interviews, I'm hiring you for a career, not a job. A job is a temporary patch to help you pay your water bill. Yep. A job for bringing that person in as a job is what you said. IRS is on my back. This is here. This is here. This is here. A career develops culture. And just implanting to people, I want you long term. If you don't think this is long term for you, then there's probably a road we don't need to go down. You need to find the road that's best for you, instead of, hey, I got to get somebody. And it's really huge. I find also as an employer, I believe in the employee a lot of times more than they believe in themselves. And eventually they have to come up to the same level.
Yeah.
If not, we have that dependent relationship. Yeah. Can I buy the ink pens?
Yeah. Yeah. We talk about that all the time. You know, potential is not what you are, it's what you can become. And I think as the leader or the employer, you have to see that in people. Because sometimes you look on paper, back to your KFC kind of quote, it's not there on paper.
Yep.
But there's that gut feeling. Same thing that makes you successful in business. It's almost an intuition. Like, you know, there's more in there. And if we can water this person's going to grow, they're going to blossom. I think if leaders would take more of that approach, we do the same thing. You know, the first thing is this is not a hiring process. We tell people this is a selection process.
That's right.
You know, I'll remind them, you know, we select 1 out of 100.
Yep.
And we've went 1.5 years with a position empty.
Yep.
You know, because this is a career, not a job.
Yes, sir.
And we take it a step further. And it doesn't matter if they're in accounting or they're in sales. If you can't make a 2-year commitment, that's in our first phone interview. Then we don't need to talk.
That's right.
Because I think it goes back to what you were saying earlier. You're thinking 12 months down the road. Well, we're going to pour and invest in a person. And what we'll tell them is, I'm interviewing you today, not just for the position that's open, but for where I see our company 5 years from now. And how do you fit into that? And so if you're simply here for a job or for a short-term basis, it doesn't fit what we're trying to do, because we only promote from within.
Absolutely.
And so I think if more people took that mindset towards their organization, I think the other part of that is that we would treat these people more like family. That's the biggest compliment that I hear when people actually get through the hoops, you know, because the last interview that we do, it's a husband and wife if they're married.
That's right.
Over dinner. And that is so telling, because that's the real time. If we've already done 3 interviews up to that point, that's the time to really figure out. And I want you, spouse, tell me why we're a good long-term fit for your family.
That's right.
And you're able to find out real quick what they've communicated to each other. And you're able to find out many times through
that they didn't.
Yeah, what they didn't, and what those expectations
and how
are
that's going to erode the year from now later.
Absolutely.
And I think that people out, you know, always out of the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. Whatever's going on personal at home, whether it's good, bad, ugly, wonderful, if it's a Hallmark movie or if it's American Gladiators, it's going to present itself at work.
Yep.
Always.
Yeah, the fallacy of living these compartmentalized lives is a joke. Yeah. I mean, we're managing all of that. And so it's interesting you brought that up, because one of the things that we try to do every 12 weeks is we go through this exercise called a Life 360. And there's 6 things in there, and we'll ask every employee to evaluate themselves on a scale of 1 to 10. And none of them have to do with skill set. And we'll intentionally do that in the last interview with the spouse there. And we'll tell them every time, if this seems too personal and makes you uncomfortable, we are not the place for you. Yep. Now, we're not going to do this with your spouse ever again, but we're going to do this with you every 12 weeks. And I want you to rate on how you're doing in the area of your friendships. I want you to evaluate yourself on how you're doing in the area of your fitness, and how you're doing in the area of your finances, how you're doing in the area of your immediate family. I mean, like, it's not uncommon for us to ask the question during a review on how many times you're dating your wife this month. And if it's not once a week, we're challenging them. Yeah. So, and the reason I say all that is because, again, to your point, and what we'll tell them and try to get them to think, listen, as an employer, if you don't think that's important, you go hire somebody that has marital problems 6 months after you hire them. They're not the same person. No. They're not the same person 6 months after they get a divorce either. Yep. So, you should treat them right and serve them and be thinking about these things and providing resources, because it's the right thing to do. Yep. If you don't want to look at it just from a bottom line, there's the fruit of that. You need to be looking at that even from a bottom line standpoint and investing in them. And we're able to take that information, though, and be able to offer resources, that help in all those areas. Because many times it's not that, and this is not always the case, life changes, responsibilities change, but many times the finance problem that we have when some of our folks not having enough money is they're not managing what we're giving them. Yeah. And so you could pay them $200, but they're still spending $220. Yeah. And in those cases, you find out everyone has a love language. Absolutely. Everyone, in reference to books that are good, but everyone has a different love language. And we have really good marketing. We have a young woman that is dedicated to doing that, and she does a great job. But one of her frustrations all the time is, guys, I need that janitor to speak to people when they come in. And that has to be, that good marketing in reference to the earlier conversation has to be permeated all the way through. Yeah, there's a squandered opportunity. Yeah, the salesmen are supposed to be nice, but everyone better be. For sure. Last question. Okay. How do you want to be remembered when your life here on earth is over? I want people to remember me that Jesus was everything. And that sounds coy. I have a collection of, I have a addiction. I like old signs. My office looks a lot like Cracker Barrel. And I joke with people, I have a collection of old farm equipment signs. And I put them there intentionally. Old dealerships locally that have went out of business or are no longer there. I always tell people all the time, I walk past down a hallway every day that people have either went broke doing this or they died doing this. And it really sets in tone every day of any obstacle I'm facing. The eternal one is the most important. How am I impacting people for Christ? Because, we win national awards. We're top 10 in many things that we do. I can't take those to the bank. Those don't make my children or my daughter a better person, doesn't give me a better marriage, doesn't give me a better anything. Hangs on the wall and looks cute. But if I'm sacrificing that for my character or my responsibilities or my first priorities, I'm missing it. For sure. Ego is always, I can't stress that enough, ego is always exchanged for reality. I don't go to dealer meetings. I don't go to award ceremonies because I don't want to be in a room full of people that are paid to smile at me and say, go get them, son. I want to keep clarity in my head of really what's important. There are people that are fueled by the next award or the next thing, and that's fine. People need to be honored. But when you exchange that for your behavior, it's a problem. Yeah, all in balance and the proper perspective. Yes, sir. Justin, I appreciate you being on the show today. Thank you very much. A lot of valuable content there. I know learned through a lot of hard lessons, and I love the fact of what you were honing in on there. At the end of the day, the scorecard for winning and losing is never going to be the bank account. No, sir. It's always going to be these people
very irrelevant
that have been in our lives, and so. I just encourage you guys out there today, pay close attention to that. Use that as a marker. Write some of these things down. This is one you're probably going to want to listen to a couple of times. Remember, your culture is only as healthy as the leader, and we'll see you next time on the Culture-neer podcast. Terry Gwaltney from the Culture-neer podcast. Listen, I want to say thank you for listening to the podcast today. Also want to encourage you to help us get the message out to more people. If you could like, share, and review this content on wherever you consume it. You go to YouTube or LinkedIn or just whatever your social media channels are. And you could even share it. That would be a big help to us here at the Culture-neer podcast. Also, if you'd like some more information, you can go to www.terrygwaltney.com where we have updates. We also have more resources. We share articles there. And you also can find our new book there called The Culture-neer. Again, we want to thank you again for taking time just to listen to the podcast or view it on YouTube. It's our goal to spend 20 or 30 minutes each time we're together to help grow your culture to a point where your employees refuse to leave and your customers can't resist. This is Terry. We'll talk to you soon.